I'm just going to tell you briefly about some projects that I've done in Brighton over the years. All the projects are about waste prevention or getting waste out of the waste stream, really, and back into use in some way. And gosh, these have got a life of their own. Hang on. Yeah, and the reason I do that is that we're using incredibly vast amounts of finite resources. The amount of raw materials we use every year has doubled in the last 10 years. So this is, we're in a climate emergency, we're in a resource emergency. Unless we all get a lot cleverer with what we do with stuff, we really are going to run out of a lot of resources in the coming generation. And as Duncan referred to, we have a linear model. We use resources, we make things, and then we get rid of them. And it's entirely bonkers because we have for many decades invested in the bottom of the waste hierarchy, recycling and energy for waste facilities, trying to keep things out of landfill, but we haven't really invested at the top of the waste hierarchy. And so a lot of activity that goes on around minimisation, prevention and reuse is done by the third sector, by small and medium enterprises, and by innovators and crazy people like myself. And that's because it sort of lacks industrial infrastructure. So one of the things I did years ago with a couple of hundred other people was start an online network just for citizens in the UK to help them not throw out so much stuff. And when they've got things they don't want, our system allows them to give it away in their local community so that somebody else can reuse the things that they don't want anymore. It's a very low-key thing. We have no funding. It's entirely volunteer run. 2.7 million registered reusers. And in Brighton and Hove, where I live, it keeps around 10 tonnes of goods in circulation every single month of the year. And get a huge plethora of goods get given away, gardening, building materials, furniture, clothing, books. Basically anything legal can be FREEGLed. And it is a very simple thing, but it's incredibly valuable. And sometimes it's just the simple things that we need to do, and we need to tell more people about them so that they do it too. From all the work I did with FREEGLE over the years, I became known to the City Council for what I was doing, and they introduced me to Duncan back in, I think, 2011 or somewhere around there. And we came up with the idea of building this beautiful place, but building it out of waste and trying to avoid using brand new materials. And I convinced Duncan that I would be able to source enough waste to actually build the house. After we'd completed the house, I had around 35 tonnes of stuff in my store area, so that proved to be very true indeed. It's won a couple of Royal Institute of British Architects awards and a lot of other sustainability awards as well. So it's it's not just a novelty, it's a very serious building. It has permanent planning permission. And why we did that is because the construction industry is responsible not only for a lot of the materials we consume, but for an incredible amount of waste as well. And we have a target to lower our carbon emissions. And in order to do that, it would be very sensible if we changed a lot of the practices in the construction industry. These slides are just giving you an idea of some of what so-called waste is. You'll notice the timber here it's actually brand new virgin plywood, straight from Brazil. We got it straight off the ship, and that's considered waste because of that tiny little bit of damage on the corner. We managed to put it to good use and build the actual structures for the house. And then we use some just ubiquitous household waste in very deep interior walls where we're testing to see if they make good insulation or not. Although only around 2 billion people use toothbrushes in the world, we actually manufacture 35 billion every single year. So that's a very easy waste stream that we could be isolating and doing something sensible with. And this just gives you an idea of some of the other materials. And the hut just over behind us, there's more information about the waste house. And I think the most important thing, apart from using waste and kind of proving that a lot of waste is reusable, is it meant all the professionals and all the people that worked on the project, students, volunteers, myself, the university, we all had to rethink how we normally do stuff and change our linear model and be more resourceful. And that was really one of the biggest achievements out of the project, was everybody just thinking a bit differently about how they go about their business. This was actually at FutureBuild back in 2013. That's a huge totem pole that we built, and that actually got reused in the waste house in the interior walls. And while I was doing the waste house, the council, I used to get very cranky at the council for having skips outside their buildings and throwing things away. So I convinced them that if they ever had things they didn't need, they could employ me and I would be able to rehome their unwanted goods. I've now done 15 buildings for them over the last 6 years. Some of them on a really big scale, like Hove Town Hall, which kept 138 tonnes of goods in circulation rather than going in skips. And then I also cleared this building, which is 280 rooms, 100,000 square foot, and it took me 18 months. The council left behind 170 tonnes of unwanted stuff, and 150 tonnes of that was redistributed to be reused. So I'm just forever trying to turn people's discards into a resource, and often that's just about getting it from one sector to another sector. And therein lies another challenge, because the waste industry is divided into sectors, and actually a lot of the magic happens is when you get materials between the sectors, and that's frequently all I'm doing, is kind of being a vertical disruptor between sectors of the community. Apart from the obvious environmental impact of preserving resources and avoiding waste, actually the greatest joy of reuse is that it makes people happy, and it's a very social activity. And sometimes I think we need to remember that the circular economy should be about people as well, and about well-being, and how can we make people's lives better. And that is definitely something that I'm able to do with the work I do for the council. And then there's some really lovely sort of odd projects that come off the back of those pretty straightforward reuse projects. So for example, I have half a shipping container full of plastic in trays, like in the picture there, and they're very hard to get reused because offices are going paperless, and there's only, so many people that want plastic in trays. So I partnered up with the University of Brighton and a local fashion designer, Ruby Moon Swimwear, and a local plastic artist, and we've prototyped making these spectacles as an example of how, again, even if something's obsolete or no longer has a purpose, there are ways of turning these things into valuable items. And even something as simple as broken umbrellas that I collect for a local designer, she turns them into Spanish dancing dresses. And then this is just a student graduate project who also got some more office plastic waste off me and has made some beautiful designer furniture. And I think the University of Brighton has a fantastic exhibition over there of new materials that they're making out of waste streams. And I'm just going to finish off with the project that I've run with Dr. David Greenfield for the last year or so. So in the last 15 months, we ran 5 pop-up shops in Brighton. They were open for a total of 28 days. They were open to the public to bring in their unwanted, obsolete technology, and we had government funding to data wipe that technology. Over those 28 days, from 650 people, we received 8.9 tonnes of unwanted electronics, some of which are in the cage over on the back there. And we're working with other people now, not only to get those things data wiped and reused, but to do some very hyper recycling and extract the valuables out of them, and then hopefully be able to make new products out of the plastic in time. So that's me. I'm going to wrap up so I don't go over time to begin with. That's just a little flavour of some of the things I do. I'm just an ordinary citizen. You know, I'm not working for a company. I'm not a researcher. I'm not an academic. So it is very possible for all of us to be more resourceful and just to think about what we do with stuff in a more positive way.